Smoke curls like a serpent from the sacred olive groves. You choke on it first, the acrid bite of burning myrtle and pine, sharp as a blade against your throat. Then the cries rise, thin and piercing, carried on the wind from the Acropolis heights. Not the roar of battle, but something softer, more broken, the wail of a city unraveling thread by thread. Footsteps echo now heavy, deliberate, the tramp of 10,000 elite guards, their golden spears glinting under a merciless sun. The Immortals have come, and, in their wake, the air thickens with a silence that screams louder than any war horn. What they did next would scar Greece forever. But hold that thought, the desecration was just beginning. What you're about to hear involves acts of profound violation, including the implied fates of women sworn to sacred duties amid a city's fall. These events draw from ancient accounts of conquest's brutality, documented yet harrowing. If this pulls too close, step away. I respect that. For those who stay, we uncover not the spectacle of pain, but the machinery that birthed it, an empire's cold calculus of fear. Imagine a world where gods walked among men, or so the Greeks whispered in their marble halls. This wasn't blind rage tearing through Athens in the autumn of 480 BC. This was erasure, deliberate, and divine in its cruelty. Xerxes, king of kings, son of Darius, had crossed the sea on a bridge of boats, his army a tide that swallowed lands from the Indus to the Nile. Vengeance burned in him, not for some petty slight, but for the ghost of Marathon, a decade earlier, when Athenian runners had outfoxed Persian might and sent word of victory with a single, exhausted cry, "We won." Now, with Thermopylae's pass breached and Leonidas's 300 reduced to legend, Xerxes aimed higher. Athens, cradle of democracy's fragile flame, would kneel or break. The stakes? Everything. For Persia, submission meant the end of rebellion's spark across their western fringe. For Greece, a patchwork of squabbling city-states, unity hung by the thread of shared dread. Athens alone fielded 200 triremes, sleek war machines crewed by farmers turned sailors. But Xerxes brought 5 times that in hulls, plus an Immortal Guard whose numbers never dipped below 10,000, replace one fallen warrior, and the ranks filled like water from an endless spring. This machine didn't just conquer, it unmade worlds, temple by temple, soul by soul, and in that unmaking, a single act on the Acropolis would echo through centuries, reminding us that power's true weapon is the shattering of what a people hold holy. But how did a boy king from Persepolis become this architect of dread? The Persian realm stretched like a lion's pelt across 3 continents, its heart in the high plateaus where lions roamed and kings dreamed of eternity. Born around 519 BC, Xerxes, his name meaning ruling over heroes, was no stranger to the throne's weight. His father, Darius, had forged this colossus from Cyrus the Great's bones, quelling revolts with a bureaucracy as vast as his satrapies. Taxes flowed like the Tigris, spies, the king's eyes whispered from every shadow, yet cracks showed early. In 499 BC, Greek outposts in Ionia, those rebellious Aegean islands, rose against their Persian overseers. Athens sent ships and men, a fatal metal. The rebels torched Sardis, Persia's glittering western capital, its flames a slap to imperial pride. Darius vowed payback. He launched a first probe in 490 BC, landing at Marathon's shores. There, 10,000 Athenians, led by the steady Miltiades, charged into the fray. The Persians broke, their immortals tasting dust for the first time. Darius seethed, plotting a grander stroke, but death claimed him in 486 BC, mid-preparations, leaving Xerxes a half-built vengeance machine. At 24, the young king inherited not just an empire, but a grudge etched in gold tablets. Advisors swarmed. Mardonius, the hawkish general hungry for glory. Artabanus, his uncle, urging caution against these sea-dividing upstarts. Xerxes wavered, haunted by dreams of his father's unfulfilled oath. Then came the omens, a solar eclipse, whispers from Egyptian priests, and resolve hardened. He wasn't forged in malice from the cradle. No, the court of Persepolis shaped him, a place of eunuchs and intrigue where boys learned to wield power like a scimitar. One formative scar, quelling the Babylonian revolt in 482 BC, just before the Greek push. He razed their temples, melted their idols not out of fury, but to remind all that gods bowed to kings. Another, the endless drills with the Immortals, those flower-helmeted elites whose loyalty was bought with land and fear of replacement. Xerxes drilled beside them, sweat mingling with theirs, but always one step above. Trauma lingered from Darius's shadow. The old king had executed brothers to secure the line, teaching that mercy invited knives in the dark. By 481 BC, Xerxes saw Greece not as a land, but a wound, a democratic fever that could spread, toppling satraps from afar. The turning point came that winter, in the halls of Susa. Envoys from Median Greek states Thessaly, Thebes offered tribute, maps of passes, promises of open gates. Mardonius fanned the flames. Strike now, or watch rebellion bloom eternal. Xerxes gazed at a map unrolled like a prayer rug, his finger tracing from the Hellespont to Attica. They burned our city, he murmured. Sardis's ashes still stung. Orders flew. Canals dug around storm-tossed capes. Bridges lashed from Phoenician hulls. By spring, 480 BC, 500,000 souls, foot soldiers, charioteers, camp followers marched from Sardis. The machine whirred to life, but that wasn't the worst part. As the host crested the mountains into Greece, a whisper spread among the ranks. Athens held maidens sworn to Athena, virgins whose purity warded the city's soul. To touch them? Sacrilege. To break them? A message from the gods themselves. Autumn winds whipped the Saronic Gulf, carrying the salt sting of fear to Salamis' rocky shores. Picture the scene. Triremes bob like nervous horses, their bronze rams etched with owls Athena's mark. The air hums with the creak of oarsmen shifting, murmurs from Corinthian captains doubting the madness of holding here. Themistocles, the silver-tongued architect of this fleet, paces the deck of his flagship, Hermes. His eyes, sharp as a strategist's quill, scan the horizon where Persian sails blot the sky like locusts. He's 40 now, born to a noble mother and a helot father, risen by wits alone, ostracized once for his cunning, recalled in this hour of need. The wooden walls, he mutters, echoing Delphi's riddle, not stone ramparts, but these ships Greece's true shield. Below, in the holds, families huddle, wives clutching infants, elders murmuring prayers to Poseidon. Athens' evacuation had been chaos scripted by genius. Themistocles' decree, carved in stone that spring, ordered every soul seaward, women and children to Trojan's kindly arms, treasures to Salamis' caves. But not all obeyed. Up on the Acropolis, a young woman named Calliope lingered. 19 summers old, daughter of a potter from the Kerameikos quarter, she served as kanephoros, a basket-bearer in Athena's rites. Her hands, calloused from weaving saffron threads for the goddess's veil, trembled as she barred the temple doors. Calliope wasn't brave by birth. No, she stayed for the oracle's vow. The gods will guard their own. Her mother had fled, sobbing, to a trireme's belly. "Live for me," she'd whispered, pressing a clay owl into Calliope's palm. Now, alone in the flickering torchlight, Calliope traced Athena's carved eyes, whispering, "Protect us, unyielding one." The air grew heavy with incense and dread. Outside, the Persian host encircled the city like a noose. The confrontation unfolded at dusk, when shadows pooled like blood in the streets. Xerxes had entered Athens unopposed, the agora echoing with his guards' boots. Most homes stood empty, hearths cold, but the Acropolis glowed defiant, a last ember in twilight. Hydarnes, captain of the Immortals, led the assault. Tall, scarred from Scythian bows, his violet cloak billowed as he signaled his men. Historical whispers paint him as loyal to a fault, once offered a kingdom by Xerxes and refusing. Better to serve than rule. Now he served erasure. Arrows whistled first, flaming tips arcing like fallen stars, igniting the wooden palisade the holdouts had rigged. Calliope pressed against the temple wall, heart hammering. Smoke clawed her lungs. Through the haze, she glimpsed them. The Immortals. Faces masked in linen, spears tipped with electrum. Hydarnes' voice cut the din, accented with eastern lilt. Yield the sacred fire and live. Calliope's refusal came soft, a girl's defiance wrapped in prayer. Athena's flame bows to no king. The demand escalated, surrender the votives, the golden keys to the goddess's heart. She clutched her basket, saffron spilling like wounds. Hydarnes paused, his eyes dark pools under a crested helm flickering with something like regret. Orders from the great king were iron: desecrate to demoralize, break the spirit before the stone. The breach came swift. Immortals scaled the walls on ladders of woven reed, their sandals silent as death. Calliope backed into the naos, the inner sanctum, where Athena's olive wood statue loomed. The air thickened. What followed blurred into shadow, the clash of bronze, a cry cut short, the profane hush that follows violation. Not gore, but the unraveling. Veils torn like trust, purity profaned as policy. Hydarnes turned away, face carved from granite, as his men enacted the king's will. Flames licked higher, consuming what hands had spared. Word trickled to the fleet by dawn's gray light, borne on a fisherman's skiff. Themistocles heard it amid the council's clamor, Corinth's Adamantos pounding the rail, Spartans growling for retreat. They've taken the rock, the sailor gasped. The maidens, the sacred ones, broken like clay. Themistocles' fist clenched the gunwale, knuckles white. He knew the tally. Not mere plunder, but 2,000 souls virgins, mothers, the hidden who defied evacuation scattered in the sack's wake. Historians debate the number, but the system's reach was clear. Whole quarters emptied, not by blade alone, but by the terror of what blades implied. This wasn't lust's frenzy. It was machinery Xerxes' intelligence web reporting Greek taboos, then exploiting them. Break the virgins, and you fracture Athena's vow. The fleet reeled, oarsmen whispering of omens reversed, but Themistocles saw the angle. Their shame is our steel, he told the captains. Lure them to the straits. Let the narrows choke their horde. From Salamis's cramped decks, the escalation unfolded like a fever dream. Themistocles paced, mind a whirlwind of feints. He'd sent a defector, a slave, with honeyed lies to Xerxes' pavilion, whispering of Greek discord, urging battle in the open bay. The king bit, his armada cramming the straits like sheep in a pen, but the true spread of horror rippled wider. In the Persian camp, couriers tallied the take, ivory tusks from the Erecthean, tripods melted for coin. Mardonius, Xerxes' kinsman and warlord, logged it all reports from satraps on Boeotia's Medazers. Incentives for loyalty, land grants for those who turned Greek eyes. The machine hummed. Villages in Attica fell next, not to siege, but surrender. A farmer's widow in the hills, her sons fled to the fleet, bartered silence for her children's breath. They came at moonrise. She'd later confide to a returning exile, not for grain, but to mark us arches of ash over doorways, warnings etched in soot. Breathe here, amid the salt spray. Notice the gulls wheeling lazy circles, indifferent to the drama below. One immortal, weary from the march, pauses on a cliff to etch a lion on driftwood, a homesick token from Persia's wilds. Beauty in the breach, olive branches, unburnt, nodding in the breeze as if mocking the flames. Such contrasts fueled the Greeks' fire. Back on the waves, Themistocles twisted the knife. His ruse worked. Persian hulls tangled, rams splintering like teeth. By dusk, the sea ran red, not with blood, but the froth of broken oars. Xerxes watched from Mount Aegaleos. Thrown on a promontory, his face a mask of thunder. 200 ships lost, his aura cracked, yet the desecration's echo lingered, a psychological lash. Greek rowers, hearing of the Acropolis's fall, rowed harder, vengeance in every stroke. The system spread its shadow, fear as currency, traded from satrap to spy. But one crack showed a Theban defector, whispering routes to Plataea, where land would turn the tide. He made a crucial mistake, though. Trusting the wrong ear, time slows now, the air of vice around your chest. September's heat clings to the Acropolis like a shroud, the sun dipping low as flames crown the propylaea. Calliope, or what remains of her resolve, stirs in the temple's gloom. The Immortals have withdrawn, their work done, statues toppled, altars smeared with the unthinkable. She crawls to a niche, clutching the owl talisman, its clay warm from her bloodied grip. Outside, Hydarnes rallies his guard for the fleet's call. Xerxes' courier arrives, papyrus scroll unrolling. Burn it all, let their gods taste defeat. Torches flare, 100 hands igniting the Old Temple of Athena. Wood crackles, then roars, swallowing beams carved by father's long dust. The Older Parthenon follows, its limestone facade splitting like bone under heat's assault. Screams mingle with the blaze, not just from the holdouts, those treasury clerks and paupers who'd trusted wooden walls of their own making, but from the city's ghosts. Echoes of virgins led away in chains, their saffron robes trailing like funeral pyres. The climax peaks not in one blow, but a cascade. Arrows, once flaming warnings, now loose from Persian bows at fleeing shadows below. The Acropolis, that sheer rock of defiance, becomes a pyre for sacrilege. Xerxes, from his gilded tent, orders the rite complete. Not random fury, but targeted libraries gutted to erase wisdom, workshops razed to starve the fleet. 2,000 lives, estimates whisper, caught in the net. Not warriors, but the overlooked servants, the devout, young women like Calliope who'd bet on divine mercy. The act itself, a void, implied in the aftermath's hush. Bodies later found, veils askew, faces turned from the dawn. Hydarnes, overseeing the retreat, pauses at the gate. A single immortal falters, spear dropping haunted, perhaps by a girl's unblinking gaze. The crack widens. Overreach. Xerxes' rage blinds him to Salamis's trap. His immortals stretch thin, morale fraying like sailcloth. The system stutters. As the last embers die, a wind shifts, carrying ash seaward. To the Greeks at Salamis, it's a sign. Athena weeps, but she does not yield. The breaking wasn't hers. It was the tide turning, wave by inexorable wave. Xerxes lingered only weeks after the flames. Salamis's wreckage forced his hand, half his fleet splintered. Admirals drowned or fled. He entrusted Mardonius with the remnants, a rear guard of 40,000, then marched north, bridges intact for his retreat. The king never returned to Greece. His later years dissolved in palace plots, murdered in 465 BC by a chamberlain's blade, irony's twist, felled by the very loyalty he'd engineered. Mardonius pushed on, sacking Athens anew in 479 BC, but Plataea's fields claimed him, his head severed on a spear. The Immortals scattered, their legend tarnished. Hydarnes survived, vanishing into Persia's folds, a ghost in dispatches. For Athens, the return was bitter bread. Themistocles led the exiles home that winter, picking through char and bone. Calliope, if she lived, and whispers say one such shadow did, scarred but unbowed, faded into the rebuilt streets, her tale woven into women's songs. The city tallied losses, temples, ashen skeletons, fields trampled to mud, yet resilience bloomed. Silver mines at Laurion, untapped in exile, flooded coffers. By 470 BC, walls rose anew, Themistocles' vision in rubble repurposed. Power shifted east. The Delian League, Athens' naval pact, swelled to empire. Long-term, democracy deepened, Pericles' age gilded by this forge fire. Ironic detail. The very arrowheads from that sack, Persian bronze, were melted into Athena's new shield, turning violation to victory's gleam. Dust motes dance in a modern beam of light, high above the agora where vendors once hawked figs and fate. It's 1970, and Manolis Kores, a wiry archaeologist with hands like a sculptor's, sifts through the Acropolis's underbelly. His team students in sun-bleached hats uncover it layer by layer. The purser shut, that telltale debris of 480 BC, charred beams from the Old Temple, arrowheads stamped with Xerxes' lily seal, sherds of Attic black figure pots shattered mid-rite. No mass graves, thank the gods, no lurid tally of the broken. But the voids speak, empty niches where votives vanished, scorch marks on marble like accusations. Kores pauses, brush hovering over a fragment, a saffron-dyed thread, perhaps from a kanephoros' veil. They meant to erase, he murmurs to his logbook, but stone remembers. This find, pieced with earlier digs by Defiled in the 1,880 seconds, proves the machine's mark, systematic, not savage happenstance. Hesperia journals later detail it destruction horizons across the agora, workshops gutted, yet no wholesale slaughter. The evacuation worked, most women sailed free, but the implications? Kores's work ties to Shear's 1993 analysis. The sack accelerated Athens' pivot to sea power, birthing the classical bloom, tangible proof, a lone owl figurine, intact amid ash, mocking the flames. Why does this echo now? Not in preachy parallels, but a quiet truth. Power's desecrations rarely stay buried. Think of modern sieges cities like Sarajevo, where snipers picked at daily bread, or Aleppo's minarets toppled like dominoes. There, too, the machine grinds, not immortals in cloaks, but drones and decrees, targeting the sacred to break the spirit. Xerxes' calculus lives on, violate the hearth, and watch resistance curdle. Yet human nature flips the script. Calliope's kin rebuilt, Chorus's trowel unearths defiance. It teaches this: systems shatter on resilience's edge. The virgins weren't just victims, they were the wardens of a fire that outlasted empires. Greece didn't fall because one act couldn't snuff the divine spark. It rose, harder, brighter. Return to that smoke-choked Acropolis, but see it changed. Dawn breaks now, ash settling like gray snow, the first exiles cresting the hill. Calliope or her echo stands amid the ruin, talisman in hand. The gods didn't guard the stone, they guarded the will. Those women, meant to vanish into empire's maw, refused. They persist in Herodotus's ink, in Chorus's trenches, in the Parthenon's unyielding gaze over the sea, and now they're here with you, because you chose to listen. What part of this tale, the machine's cold spin, or the unbreaking human thread, stays with you longest? Drop it in the comments below. Your voice keeps these stories alive. In the end, history isn't what falls, it's what endures.